Live from the Talking Joe studios, it's Talking Joe.
Talking Joe is on the air.
Hey, it's me, Mark, and welcome to Talking Joe, the G.I. Joe Comics podcast. Today, we will be looking back at G.I. Joe Origins issue 19 from IDW Publishing, released September 2010. And why are we looking at this issue? We will explain that too. And explaining it with me will be my regular co-host. It's none other than the real American Tim. It's Tim Finn.
Hello, Mark, and listeners and viewers. So, this is an unusual comic, G.I. Joe Origins issue number 19 from 2010. And also unusual for us to jump back, 15 years?
To just a random book. And I created a visual design for this sort of episode. Look, Tim, comics of publishers past. You like it?
I do. Tell me where the spotlight in the background is. That from Days of Future Past? Oh, okay, right.
This is a manipulated version of Days of Future Past, the famous Uncanny X-Men issue where the X-Men are sort of doing time traveling shenanigans. So we are time traveling back to 2010 to look at this issue, number 19, having never discussed in any great detail issues 1 through to 18. But we do have a good reason to be talking about this particular book, Tim.
Yes. G.I. Joe Origins issue number 19 is a self-contained single-issue story written by Larry Hama. He wrote the opening arc of IDW's G.I. Joe Origins. That was when IDW started its new continuity for G.I. Joe after the Devil's Due publishing era ended. And this is before IDW started up its continuation of the Marvel Larry Hama continuity. And so when IDW starts after Devil's Due, it launches 3 books. The main G.I. Joe, written by Chuck Dixon, Cobra, co-written by Christos Gage and Mike Costa, and G.I. Joe Origins. The opening arc of G.I. Joe Origins was written by Larry Hama and technically takes place in that other continuity. Although Hama, I believe, has said he counts that as part of his Marvel and Marvel Continued continuity. Hama came back a few issues later to write another arc for G.I. Joe Origins,
which is decidedly not in the regular ARAH continuity, because that sort of has a semi-origin of Snake Eyes in that particular issue, which is a different origin to the one we recognize.
Oh, right. That opening arc has a villain before Cobra Commander, where the Joes are sort of arriving at the pit for the first time. I haven't read it since it came out. We should talk about it one day on the show. And then there's this third instance where Larry Hama writes for this ongoing monthly anthology, G.I. Joe Origins. And it's this self-contained Snake Eyes issue 19. And the hook here is that it is a wordless issue. It is a silent issue. And while Devil's Due had published a wordless, silent issue of G.I. Joe, Larry Hama was not involved with that. Mm-hmm. And so this here in 2010 is the first time that Larry Hama wrote a new wordless G.I. Joe story since the Marvel era of 1982 to 1994. Of course, somewhere in there, Hasbro had also reprinted issue 21, Marvel's issue 21, that came with some action figures. More about that in a moment.
Well, while we're on that particular topic, I can kind of talk to it a little bit, because Luke on our Facebook group sometimes will do a deep dive into various elements of a particular bit of complexity around G.I. Joe continuity, and he put together this list of G.I. Joe silent stories. So there's obviously the one that we all know, issue 21, Silent Interlude, which started it all. We then had issue 85, SFX, which is silent apart from sound effects. There was the Ron Wagner drawn Hush Job in yearbook number 3. There was also in the pages of European Missions a short story called War Correspondence. Then, as you spoke to, there was G.I. Joe issue 21 from Devil's Due, which was not written by Hama either. That was very much part of the Devil's Due continuity, which has since been disavowed. But also from Devil's Due at that time was the release of the Snake Eyes declassified trade paperback with a short prelude story, Silent Prelude, again drawn by Ron Wagner, which over Hama breakdowns, I believe that was. And
so I stand corrected. A moment ago, I said Hama didn't do any wordless stories for Devil's Due. That is not technically true. But since that short story only came in a graphic novel with a low print run and most people don't have it, close enough. Please continue, Mark.
There was then also G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, issue 21B, Silence Between Borders, which we talked about recently, which was a comic pack-in with a 2-pack of toys released through Hasbro. And alongside that as well was a story called Splash Bang, which was planned to be released as an action figure 2-pack, but only was distributed in a spotty way, which makes it harder to find, although it is available in print. And then there was also a couple of digital silent stories distributed via Shout Factory as part of their DVD releases, which sort of tied in to the timing of the release of the movies. And so I think in terms of this continuity, this timeline, we are now at G.I. Joe Origins issue 19 with the next installment of a silent issue, but significantly the sort of the first from Hama, which is a pure silent issue in a regular book, let's say, as opposed to something that's slightly to the side in terms of how it has been published.
Now, there's a funny thing happening here, which is that the original wordless issue, Silent Interlude, is Marvel 21, and then Devil's Dues is G.I. Joe issue 21. And you might think that if IDW had a wordless Larry Hama story ready to go, they might hold it until G.I. Joe Origins issue 21. And I don't know that there's any story here. It may have been simply that, this is where it fell in the schedule, and coming after it was a 4-part story, which is quite good, written by David Lapham, I think. And it, didn't make sense to hold this single issue. It might be that someone at IDW specifically didn't want to compete with sort of the collective memory of a 21st issue being this fun novelty, and so they picked a number that wasn't 21. But what we do know is that Hama did write this as a wordless story. This was not, some sort of last minute change or accident. It's not like the word balloons were left off. And I recall that Hama did layouts for this.
Yeah, let's get onto that let's get onto that in a second when we look at maybe the credits for this particular issue. So the reason that we're talking about it specifically now is that now in 2025, there's been a solicit for a new issue, issue 321, written by Larry Hama and drawn by Chris Mooneyham, which is advertised as, with a great big 300, a new silent interlude, 300 issues in the making. It's the first silent interlude type sequel for 300 issues, if you exclude all of the others. And they're very much talking about it as kind of this sort of this sequel to both G.I. Joe ARAH 21 in terms of the thematic sequel, but specifically in terms of storytelling, a sequel to G.I. Joe Origins issue 19. So they what they said about issue 321 coming out later this year is that G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, issue 321 will be a all-new silent issue. The iconic series from Larry Hama and Chris Mooneyham continues with a can't-miss issue this October. The face of comic books changed forever when G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, issue 21, introduced fans to The Silent Interlude, an action-packed story with no dialogue. Now, Larry Hama and Chris Mooneyham present an all-new silent issue no G.I. Joe fan can miss, as Snake Eyes and Dawn must defend the pit from unexpected attack. Now, Larry Hama has this to say about 321. This is another all-silent issue featuring the return of the sound-weaponizing characters introduced in G.I. Joe Origins issue 19. They have developed an air-portable version of their sonic weapon and have mounted it as a stealth dirigible to attack the G.I. Joe installation under Camp Greer in the Utah desert. Snake Eyes and Dawn Moreno, having been at the soundproof range in the lowest level of the pit, are the only Joes unaffected and must attack the airship by themselves. So here in the preview pages that Skybound have supplied, we can see that dirigible. We can see on the bottom left-hand page of the first page supplied some familiar-looking characters and their supporting troops, as well as an allusion to that on the front cover that Chris Mooneyham has done as well. So it's quite random, but we are seeing a 15-year on sequel to a previous issue from a previous publisher and what was basically a different continuity as well. So we'll sort of pick up that issue out of that continuity, slide it into the ARAH continuity nicely. But as we'll go on to say, that particular issue doesn't have too many elements around it that tie it to specifically to the IDW continuity. So it can be moved around a little bit more flexibly without breaking things for us continuity freaks.
All right, so Mark and I are recording this right now in early August, and I spoke with Larry Hama in March, and he had written the issue or was in the process of writing the issue, and artist Chris Mooneyham had been assigned the issue. I'm not sure if he had started drawing it. And in November of 2024, so 3/4 of a year ago, I believe Hama had this issue in mind, or perhaps editor Alex Antone had said to Larry Hama, why don't you do an issue, sort of an issue we can slot in whenever, it'll be wordless and we'll get someone great to draw it. All right, so back to today, where Mark and I are reading G.I. Joe Origins issue number 19 and talking about it for you, dear listeners. If you have a graphic novel collection of this, if you're reading it digitally, you might miss the IDW newsletter page, which comes at the end of the comic, after the story and before all the ads. And what's really remarkable about this, and I'm going close for those of you who are watching this, is that same month, IDW published 6 different G.I. Joe comics, right? The Chuck Dixon issue 22. Larry Hama had just started up again, continuing his Marvel run with his 3rd issue of A Real American Hero at IDW, 158. Cobra was finishing its 2nd arc with 2 issues, issue number 8 and a 2nd special. There was that 4-issue miniseries, Hearts and Minds. Here we have Origins 19. And then also that same month, there was a trade paperback collection of G.I. Joe Operation Hiss, which was, is that the movie's sequel or the movie prequel?
Yep.
It was not the movie adaptation. And so in 2010, folks, if you were a G.I. Joe fan, this month, there was a lot of G.I. Joe to get. And also, we were 3 years into the 25th anniversary line. So there were a lot of great action figures being released that year. And, the second movie was somewhere around there. So, okay. Mark, should we officially start our our deep dive into Origins 19?
Let's have a look at the credits for this issue. So it came from writer Larry Hama. Credits for pencils are from Joe Benitez, inks Victor Llamas, Colours J. Brown, a name that we'll remember from a long run on A Real American Hero from IDW. Assistant editor was Carlos Guzman, editor Andy Schmidt, and uncredited layouts, Larry Hama. So this is something that I think is out there in the ether. The Hama did the layouts for this one, but I tried to see what I could find out there on the interwebs to just support that. And on Larry Hama's Facebook, he had this to say: I took a stab at another Silent Snake Eyes story, but with more complex visual storytelling and self-imposed parameters like keeping track of ammo and ordnance expenditures. Wrote it and did layouts. The amazing Joe Benitez did the finished art. It should be on stands in September. The words of Larry Hama there. And this on this credits page as well is a little quote there. It says, "In the darkling wood, a leaf falls in silent arcs, steel glints in shadow, Arashikage no Hebime." What did I write about that? Just that Hebime is a rough translation of snake eyes. Hebi equals snake and me equals eye.
This is not actually a quote. This is a haiku.
Mm.
Larry Hama has written a short traditional Japanese poem in the scheme of 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 syllables for this issue. And once or twice on his Facebook page, he has just posted a haiku because he's, it tickled his fancy or he saw something interesting. And so if we think about what this poem is actually saying, it's describing Snake Eyes in a indirect and evocative way, right? In the darkling wood, a leaf falls in silent arcs. You can sort of imagine it's quiet, right? Either because this is a wordless issue, or because Snake Eyes doesn't speak, or because he's a ninja and he makes no noise when he moves. A leaf falls, that could imply time passing, nature, autumn. It could also mean a fight has happened, and a sword is slashed and a leaf is nicked and falls, not of its own accord. Right, in silent arcs, steel glints in shadow, right? So shadow, darkness, black, Snake Eyes' costume, shadow, storm shadow, steel glints, right? The metal of Snake Eyes' visor, his sword. And so Larry Hama has done a small and highly unusual, but really wonderful thing here, which I think if you're reading this comic fast, you might miss. And if you have the graphic novel collection, I assume it is not included in that or in the omnibus. And that's the older format of omnibus, which IDW and Dark Horse did, which were smaller, sort of manga size, but very thick. I got to say, if Larry Hama wants to write more haiku for the opening of G.I. Joe issues, that gets my thumbs up.
Okay, let's have a look at the covers, shall we?
Let's have a look at the covers in the gallery.
Cover A is drawn by Joe Benitez and Victor Lamas. It is colored by Jay Brown. There is no physical background. It is a full figure, a full body, jumping, attacking pose of Snake Eyes. He's coming at us. He's holding a sword and a scabbard, and the scabbard is slightly obstructing the logo. No part of Snake Eyes or his weapons are cropped at the edges. There is a white background, but instead of it being left white, it is a flat red blood splatter all the way up and down across the cover. And this is his second costume. This is version 2, right? So he has his sort of everyone's favorite version of his goggles, the metallic visor with ridges. He has his bandolier with 3 grenades, and he's got and what the artists have done here is drawn and inked all of the black part of Snake Eyes' costume as black, with just a couple of lines here or there for sort of his rib cage or his jawline to show where there's something in front of something else, or describing some musculature, right? This is not the approach that you sometimes get for Snake Eyes, where, you know, his costume is sort of left white for the color artist to do dark gray or dark blue. And then the straps and the bandoliers and the belt, those are gray. The grenades are a bit green. I'll speak a little bit more about Jay Brown's color work when we get into the issue, but he puts a bright highlight on the right side of Snake Eyes' visor, and does a little bit of rendering on those straps as well. This is pretty striking, and something that really bums me out about this cover. On the bottom right, over the barcode, in bold, it says parental advisory, which IDW was doing for, I can't remember how long, 2 years, 5 years. And it was, if I'm remembering, both for the sort of main IDW continuity, what we sometimes call the Chuck Dixon verse, as well as the Larry Hama continuation of the Marvel run, which had for some time recommended for mature readers. And that really bummed me out, because I think of G.I. Joe comics as PG-13, and certainly the live action movies are PG-13. To me, parental advisory starts to feel like age 15 or 17. And I guess, you know, I mean, PG actually means parental guidance, right? So maybe parental guidance and parental advisory are pretty similar. And I don't know, maybe if you look at PG-13, parental guidance 13, that sort of does equate to parental advisory. But I've always, the word advisory really throws me off because of the label for music albums, you know, like advisory, explicit lyrics. It's like caution, be careful, right? Whereas like guidance, hey, parents, think about offering your kids some guidance. Talk to each other. And I always felt like IDW was overcompensating. That IDW was worried that the comics had, you know, too many guns or too many people getting shots or too many sword slash wounds, and that some kid would read a G.I. Joe comic and some parent would, again, I'm running with this, right? But that they'd get in trouble because someone would overreact to violent content in a G.I. Joe comic. And, you know, I think kids can read any Larry Hama issue of G.I. Joe. And while the IDW continuity, the Chuck Dixon verse, was heavier, and while Larry Hama's Skybound continuation of the Marvel and his IDW Real American Hero run have had more blood, I don't think if you're 10, you shouldn't read this. Okay, so that's cover A. In a very unusual move, cover B is penciled and inked by the same art team. And you'd think this might happen a lot more in comics, but it really doesn't these last 20 years. So cover B is also penciled by Joe Benitez and inked by Victor Lamas. This one is colored by Andrew Crossley. He was coloring for IDW at the time, and he colored some early covers for the Larry Hama continuation of the Marvel run. This is also a drawing of Snake Eyes. This one is waist up. Snake Eyes is holding his Uzi, right? So gun, no sword. Same costume. Similarly, he's all sort of blacked out except for some edges and his visor and bandolier. And there is no background. It's all black. And so in some ways, these covers are very similar. And in some ways, they're the opposites of each other. Black, white, jumping, standing, sword, gun, so far, close. And I don't think I've actually ever seen cover B in hand or in person.
And it's sort of, and this cover as well, obviously sort of puts you in mind of some classic, like Mike Zepp style covers. There's that issue 46 with Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes standing in a doorway where Snake Eyes has got his Uzi sort of held in a similar way to this. And then of course also there's that famous 53. Issue 53 with the Marvel border going around it with Snake Eyes holding his Uzi up to his head. And there's a few others in that space as well. So it does sort of call on memories of a sort of classic Snake Eyes pose.
And it perhaps looks forward to the Herb Trimpe cover of Snake Eyes waist up, black background, holding an Uzi with the Arashikage logo behind him from, I forget, like 160. And then we've talked about this recently, the Francis Portela quote camouflage cover that kind of recreates that accidentally from like Real American Hero 310 or whatever it was, right? If you have a room full of people and they all draw different Snake Eyes covers of him holding his Uzi sort of waist up or knees up, a lot of them will end up looking like this.
Mm-hmm.
Cover C is so confusing and it really bums me out. It makes use of Ashley Wood's new cover art that he drew for Hasbro when it republished the original Marvel issue 21, the original Silent Interlude. And that comic came with a Snake Eyes and a Storm Shadow action figure.
Mm-hmm.
And Ashley Wood redrew the Ed Hannigan, Klaus Janson original Marvel cover in his, Ashley Wood's, more painterly, slightly sort of splotchy and abstracted style. And rather than using red tones, he uses sort of yellow-green tones. But it is the same pose of Snake Eyes rappelling down the side of a diagonal building thing at night, firing his Uzi and being fired upon. It's a great drawing. Hey, publishers, it's really confusing when you use a piece of art. Like, if Marvel wants to take a Jim Lee X-Men trading card from 1991 and put it on some issue of Wolverine in 2025 as a variant cover and call it like Hidden Gem or something, like, that's a little confusing, but okay. Because that's a trading card, right? Or if they want to find some like Jim Lee pinup or some like Jim Lee cover for a catalog that was not a Marvel published comic. But this Ashley Wood cover belongs to Marvel G.I. Joe issue 21. It does not belong to G.I. Joe Origins 19. The top banner of the actual published comic says G.I. Joe Origins number 19 special, right? And the word special to me says not the regular issue. So this object, if I saw it as an eBay listing, or I was flipping through a long box at a convention or a store, I would really be confused what this is, even though it tries to tell me. Origins 19? Origins 19 special? Is this a different version? Well, that's not the cover of Origins 19. That's a cover from a reprint of Marvel 21. Boo! And I guess this was the 1 in 10. I don't know they were calling it that yet.
Yeah, I'm not quite
or...
sure how it was distributed, to be honest. But
maybe while you say something, I'll look it up. Maybe I'll see if it's still on the Diamond website.
While we do that, maybe let's have a look at what happens on the inside of this particular issue with a plot breakdown.
Plot breakdown.
A C-130 transport is under attack with audio waves. Snake Eyes parachutes from the rear of the plane. He lands and cuts a wire fence, freeing a wolf. This alerts an enemy crew to his presence. Snake Eyes then infiltrates a Russian-style base in an underground silo, killing and destroying his way to a main computer to destroy the processor and computer inside the base. On his way out, he fights with 2 Russian pilots in a Hind helicopter. And once outside, he defeats them all with the help of his newfound wolf buddy. Short and sweet.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. All right, so confusingly, the Diamond website has the A cover, no longer has the B cover, lists a retailer incentive that's 1 in 10 and also a retailer incentive that's 1 in 25, but has the same image for both of them. And its description of the 1 in 10 describes it as a Joe Benitez cover.
Okay.
And its description of the 1 in 25 mentions Ashley Wood. For every 25 copies, retailers will receive 1 G.I. Joe number 21 classic series replica with Ashley Wood cover signed by Larry Hama.
Huh.
Okay. And then here I am on mycomicshop.com, which is a mail order company out of Texas that has a very sort of clear and clean sort of lookup process for back issues. And it shows cover A and cover B and cover C, which it describes as the 1 in 25 variant cover by Ashley Wood. It doesn't say it's signed by Hama, but it does. Autographed by Larry. Okay. So I think there was no 1 in 10. And I think the retailer incentive was just a 1 in 25.
Or maybe the 1 in 10. Maybe the 1 in 10 was an unsigned, perhaps.
Yes, that's very good. That's probably it. Listeners, viewers, if you want to tell us that we're wrong, chime in the comments.
Yeah, if only the After Action Report crew had done their book covering the IDW era, and we could refer to that as the definitive source. Yeah, everyone just badger those guys to make sure that book happens.
If only we were doing this as a live episode, maybe 3 different people could tell us right now. Okay, and a little more context for this comic, because you folks know I like talking about context.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole point of this series, G.I. Joe Origins, was to have the origin of some facets of G.I. Joe. So there's a single issue which has Snow Job. And for that separate Chuck Dixon IDW continuity, that is either his origin or sort of a defining moment for him, right? There's a 2-parter with Beachhead. And as I mentioned at the top of the episode, the opening arc written by Larry Hama is an origin of the Pit and not Cobra, but it gives the G.I. Joe team a little bit of a reason for being, because there is this antagonist that they have to take down. This issue, Mark, what is the origin?
I mean, maybe the origin of these Russian sound guy people, or the origin of Timber.
Yes, I believe it is your latter guess.
Mm-hmm.
And in that case, as you said before, it's a little unclear sort of how we can fit this into continuity if this is now part of the Marvel continuity, because Snake Eyes is wearing his second costume, although maybe that works, right? Because Snake Eyes version 1 didn't have a wolf. Snake Eyes version 2 does. But later in the Marvel continuity, we've learned that there's more than one Timber. And by Marvel continuity, I mean early Skybound continuity, right? So I think the intention writing this issue was, how did Snake Eyes meet Timber, right?
But I mean, we're getting into the nuts of this particular issue. But yeah, sort of doing some research and trying to see what's out there. A lot of people describe this as kind of like the introduction of Timber into the IDW universe, but he's, there's no dialogue, there's no text. So he's not called Timber anywhere. And also at the end of the story, the wolf gets left behind. It's not like Snake Eyes takes him anywhere with him or anything like that. So to some degree, he's just a random wolf that Snake Eyes encounters on this one adventure.
And if you are the IDW editorial team running 3 monthly G.I. Joe books, and you either have an issue or want an issue by Larry Hama, 3 months into the continuation of A Real American Hero, you're not going to put in this self-contained wordless issue in, I think, Siberia with a wolf, right? You're going to continue Hama's story where like Cobra takes over the White House from 158 or so. You can't slot this into Cobra. You can't slot this into Chuck Dixon's monthly G.I. Joe, but you can slot it into the anthology, G.I. Joe Origins. So even if this was not intended to be an origin of anything, if it's just a single issue story, it can and should best go there in the Origins series. And also, I feel like a year and a half into Origins, it wasn't really Origins anymore. It was like G.I. Joe Spotlight. Like the 4-issue arc that comes after this, which is very Cobra focused and it's really good. I remember it's sort of an origin of a character or concept for Cobra, but it's also just like a really good sort of supplements to the then ongoing Christos Gage, Mike Costa Cobra series. So, okay. I'm curious to know if there are any plans, specific plans for this issue from Skybound to reprint this issue, right? You and I have a vague guess that Skybound will sooner or later do, 3 big compendia of the whole continuation of A Real American Hero at IDW, right? That Skybound will reprint issues 156 through 300, right? Maybe it's a Kickstarter, maybe they're hardcovers, maybe it's a box, maybe it's just soft covers, through regular stores. But since this issue, Origins 19, is now suddenly in focus, I wonder how about this? If there is a blind bag variant version of G.I. Joe Real American Hero issue 321, I bet it's going to come with either a second comic that's a reprint of Origins 19, or the surprise is that you actually get Origins 19 new printing instead, right? Since Skybound has now rolled out this blind bag sort of variant fun gimmick with Invincible Universe, Battle Beast, having other comics besides Battle Beast.
Yeah, the no-brainer kind of decision that seems to me would have been to include G.I. Joe Origins 19 in G.I. Joe 321 to make it a double-sized issue, and obviously they don't have to pay to create that historical content, so it's a bit cheaper to make, and so maybe they put a higher price point on it. Or maybe they just surprise and delight their customers by doing exactly that when it comes out in October as a extra surprise, which is something that Skybound have been known to do, that kind of bizarre stunt.
Yes, here's one. I don't know if you're alluding to this specifically or the blind bag thing, but once or twice Skybound has just mailed a comic book to retailers and not told them what it is until it happens, and not offered it in a normal ordering solicitation cycle ahead of time, right? The best example is Negan Lives, which was that Walking Dead one-shot, which Skybound just shipped to comic book stores in like spring of 2020, I think. And it was sort of a Walking Dead epilogue. And it was based on how many copies I think a store had ordered of the final issue of Walking Dead, which had come out like a year or two before. And that sort of coupled with the blind bag thing that Skybound did for Battle Beast #1 is one more reason why I think that the decision makers at Skybound really love comics and really support comic book stores and are having a lot of fun with this. All that said, if in the next year there is no single issue reprint or surprise availability of Origins 19, that's also okay, because Skybound has not yet shown interest in representing anything published by IDW, and that's okay. They're still very much establishing the Energon universe and their take on the continuation of the Marvel continuity. And you don't have to read Origins 19 to understand Real American Hero 321, I'm sure, because in 321, Snake Eyes and Dawn are going to fight some bad guys. And, that's enough. I don't need to know about the time that Snake Eyes fought them before, necessarily.
So before we get into the detail of the, page by page, I thought I'd just share these. So this is something that Hama posted on his Facebook again. He described this as a quickie equipment diagram I did for Joe Benitez when he drew a silent issue. I wanted Snake Eyes to start out with specific weapons and reloads, and to show exact and complete expenditure so that he had nothing left at the end. He had an Uzi because I like Uzis. So he's pointing out he's got an Uzi, 3 grenades, a katana on his back, a Sykes Fairborn dagger on his front, a utility pouch for balloon and gas, which is his escape mechanism at the end of the story, and then on his thigh, his left, 3 clips for Uzi, and some sort of webbing and gear for the extraction harness, Starbo, Stabo, which probably is an acronym that stands for something. And he also created a specific web gear diagram as well. which might have been for potentially something else, because I think this might be a different loadout. But there we go.
Hey, Skybound, I know you don't listen to our podcast, and that's okay. You're busy. Please get a scan from Larry Hama of this Snake Eyes sketch and include it in your sooner or later inevitable reprinting, however that format is, of Origins 19. This is really fun. Or heck, just put it like half of a postcard size in the letters page of 321 and say, hey, fun flashback. For those of you that remember the classic Origins 19, this was Hama's sketch for Benitez. Mark, you and I have not found any of Hama's page layouts for Origins 19.
No.
Okay. So somewhere in my possession, I have 72 DPI fuzzy printouts of Joe Benitez and Victor Lamas's uncolored, unlettered, black and white artwork from this issue. And that's a fun thing that I acquired. I've never put it on my blog, or if you're watching this episode and not seeing any of these images right now, that's because either I couldn't find them, sorry, or because they're a fun object to hold, but because they are low resolution and fuzzy, they're not sort of high enough quality to sort of properly share, and they don't reveal anything that holding the comic book doesn't. Because it's different because, of course, there's no letters and there's no color. But
there's no letters on the published comic either.
Right. Thank you.
But yeah, all it is it's the published book, but without the color, essentially, isn't it? It's not necessarily such a great mystery of Hama's process, which would be the real fascinating thing to see is what was it that Joe Benitez was working from in the layout of these particular pages.
I wonder if Hama still has the layouts. I wonder if he sort of quietly sold them to a collector. Then I wonder if he has them, but they're in a box somewhere. I wonder if he has them and definitely knows where they are. I find it sort of fun and curious that not even one page of them has shown up online. Presumably Joe Benitez, got some JPEGs or a PDF or maybe photocopies.
Good point.
I wanted to talk about Benitez for a moment. Did you have anything else on this topic?
I was going to segue into Benitez as an artist. So on the screen at the moment is a Snake Eyes shot, a sort of pin-up with a Arashikage logo behind him. Which I'm not 100% sure of the provenance in this one of where it was necessarily used. I have a feeling that Benitez sort of created it as a piece for his own enjoyment / to put on postcards or posters to sort of sell at cons. But part of the story of that is that he was a G.I. Joe fan, and on his Facebook profile from 2018, he shared 2 commission pieces that he got done for him by fan favorite artist Michael Golden. So an amazing, almost yin and yang of Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow. Snake Eyes, black costume on a white background, Storm Shadow white costume on a black background. It's really fun to see that Benitez went out and got these commissioned for himself as a professional artist from one of the greats for him to have in his collection and enjoy.
One more description of these 2 drawings if you're listening, folks, and not watching. In both cases, Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes are crouching. Snake Eyes is totally kitted and geared out, Uzi sword, and Storm Shadow 2 swords plus his what are the climbing claws called that are not Wolverine claws? Mark is shrugging his shoulders.
As I was looking at Benitez's credits, I actually was reminded that this wasn't his first rodeo with G.I. Joe. He did 3 covers for Devil's Due, issues 11, 12, and 13 of the Devil's Due, A Real American Hero, featuring covers of the Dreadnoks, Roadblock, Spirit, and Lady J versus a bat, and a somewhat iconic image of Firefly in a spotlight.
Mark, when are these from?
These are 2002.
Okay, so these very much predate his Origins issue, and I've always thought that Firefly looks like someone is thinking of Michael Golden, since Firefly shows up in Yearbook 2, and now I have more circumstantial evidence since Benitez has told us that he's a big Golden fan. Joe Benitez, folks, before he drew this issue, was a Top Cow guy, and he drew a miniseries called Wraithborn in 2005, and he drew a miniseries called Weapon Zero in 2005 that was written by Walt Simonson. And I have not read these, but I feel like Weapon Zero is, somehow related to The Darkness or Cyberforce or Witchblade. And Walt Simonson wrote and drew one issue of Cyberforce. And after that Weapon Zero miniseries in 2005, Joe Benitez drew a year and a half of more Weapon Zero. In 2009, he drew a couple issues of Soulfire for Aspen, which was the Michael Turner publishing company that was creator-owned after Michael Turner had all of his success drawing Witchblade at Top Cow, right? And sorry, I should go back one step further, right? Top Cow is the part of Image Comics that belongs to Mark Silvestri, right? So Mark Silvestri breaks into Marvel in the mid-'80s. He draws an Avengers graphic novel. He gets assigned Uncanny X-Men. He moves over to Wolverine. And then he is one of the guys who leaves Marvel and founds Image Comics. And his creator-owned book there is Cyberforce, which is this team. And they've all got metal stuff on them and like their eyes glow. And in 2010, Joe Benitez started his own company and published a comic called Lady Mechanica. And a lot more of it has been published since. The initial stuff drawn by him and the later stuff made by other people. But in 2010, when this G.I. Joe issue came out, I can't remember if he had done a little bit of that Batman Superman team up book yet. I don't know exactly where, his like Darkness issue were issues. I think he did one of the Top Cow Marvel crossovers, maybe he did one of the Cyberforce meeting Wolverine, one shots. But in 2010, when this G.I. Joe Origins issue 19 was announced, it was really exciting to me because Joe Benitez was a, quote, hot artist. I don't know that he was the most popular in that category, but the way he drew, to my eye, was very much informed by Michael Turner and Mark Silvestri, right? Mm-hmm. This certain level of detail, of busyness in costumes and hatching and cross-hatching, right? And of course, Mark Silvestri had been a studio mate of Jim Lee. So this stuff also points back to Jim Lee, to like 1990 and 89. And Joe Benitez, even though he was only doing one issue of G.I. Joe, was going to bring some heat to G.I. Joe. This is how I felt when Origins 19 was coming out. Because over in the other G.I. Joe books, there was a big variety of artistic styles, right? The Cobra series had its own specific look. The main G.I. Joe series, the Robert Atkins sort of modern realism, but not like flashy sexy, but just a little flashy, right? And then there's this there's the Real American Hero continuation. I didn't know that any babes like Magdalena or any of the Cyberforce characters, I didn't know that anyone like that would show up in this issue of G.I. Joe. And it seemed like it was going to be a Snake Eyes spotlight issue. And there's a character with a subtly sexy costume, but not a flashy sexy costume. But this issue was going to have some flash. And I was excited because IDW was not treating G.I. Joe as a property that needed or wanted that kind of flash. And maybe it doesn't, right? I'm sure we'd love a Jim Lee cover besides that Fortnite crossover. But, I think most people want Jim Lee to look like Ron Wagner and Rod Wiggum or some sort of modern update of that, like Chris Mooneyham. But this was going to be more and punchy. and I had high hopes for this. At the same time, I wondered if it would work, because the magic of the original G.I. Joe issue 21, Silent Interlude, Marvel, 1984, is that Larry Hama's layouts, his breakdowns, his compositions are so controlled and thoughtful, where his characters are posed and how they're cropped within every rectangle on every page, whether that rectangle is small, big, horizontal, or vertical, right? The actual visual choreography of the original 21 is superb. And I don't know if I knew when this issue was announced that Benitez was working from Hama layouts. And when Hama writes plots for his artists and when he provides some diagrams, and I think when he does layouts, he says, this is what I see. If you have a better idea, do it. So there is leeway for an artist to, say, for Origins 19, take Hama's breakdowns, but, you know, make some things bigger, make some things smaller, make some things flashier and splashier. And based on the shapes of these panels in the printed issue, Benitez absolutely did that. He absolutely changed or enhanced, or finger quotes enhanced, Hama's layouts. And so the sort of the tension that I have in reading this comic is, would this have been better if Benitez had kind of just like traced Hama's actual breakdowns and then added his sort of spice to it, as opposed to redrawing everything and making some things bigger and some things smaller and some things, you know, more diagonal. So, Mark, do you remember when this issue came out, how you felt?
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into that as we cover it, but it didn't make a massive impact to me. I felt like it landed a little bit flat. I mean, it's obviously got a high watermark to compare against in terms of the original G.I. Joe issue 21, and this just felt like it was a fun action adventure, but without too much impact beyond that.
I will agree with you. When the issue came out, I read it and I thought, yeah, good. I also think, to be fair, when I've tracked down my copy, my brother and I were at a convention, and I think it was 1990. We'd been reading comics for a year, and we found issue 21. I think it was $18. I think we talked the dealer down to $15. And, I read it and it was good. As an 11-year-old, I didn't think this is definitely the best and most important issue of G.I. Joe. It has taken time for smart people who write about comics, who work in comics as writers and artists and editors, publishers to republish it and tell us it's important, blogger and vlogger folks to talk about it, for everyone to be convinced or realize that it really is a good and a great comic. And I do think that there's a danger in the sort of raising up of the original Silent Interlude over and over and over, of us trying to convince ourselves or new people that it's better than it is. That, sure, it's the best issue of G.I. Joe, or it's the most important issue of G.I. Joe. And Larry Hama, wrote and drew a really fun story, and the inks are great, finishes are great, right? The colors are great. And it is the first appearance of Storm Shadow, and it's a great bit of choreography. But, it's not like it's Citizen Kane and every other issue of G.I. Joe is Police Academy 6. So it can start to sort of compete with its own legend, and that can make it harder for a comic like this, right? Or, issue 248 or issue 275, other times that Hama has written a wordless issue, not done layouts, and people have drawn it. And, it could already be too late for 321, right? We could, several months from now when it comes out, we could already have been disappointed because it's good, but maybe it's not as good as the other ones. Mm-hmm. Oh, it was supposed to be like the worthy sequel, is it Empire Strikes Back, or is it The Last Jedi?
Yeah, I think the big one around this particular issue is just the general sense of purpose of what is he achieving, and what are the stakes, and what is the overall impact. So comparing it to like the original 21, Scarlet, one of the most beloved characters, is held captive. It's in the Cobra, castle. First time we've seen this, very dramatic bass. We're getting this new layer from Snake Eyes of this real badass that we haven't quite seen up to this point. And we're introduced to Storm Shadow and the mystery of the Arashikage hexagram, which plays a large part then of the G.I. Joe lore for issues and years to come. And it is a mystery that we gets expanded to some degree in the Snake Eyes origin story a few issues later in issue 26 and 27. This is more of a one and done and a kind of a so what at the end of it, that there's this weapon, but it's the weapon is relatively underbaked, and we haven't seen before, we don't see afterwards. It introduces some new baddies, but the baddies aren't, they don't have toys behind them, which makes them sort of slightly less enduring, but also the overall design of them is a little bit bland, goony, forgettable. Some of the beats of the story overall are just quite similar to the original. We'll get into that a little bit. And the art is good. It's, maybe there's a bias. It's not as amazing as the original 2021. So I think there's definitely, as you say, there's a shadow of the original source, which is large. And this definitely doesn't escape that shadow, but it also doesn't have those same elements that kind of make it the original as significant as it was with all of those things. Make it just elevate it beyond just a fun one and done adventure.
Well said.
Let's get into a bit more of the detail. So, page 1. Here's an example of a large looming shadow. It's Snake Eyes jumping out of the back of a C-130 transport, instantly recalling at the beginning of the original 21, where he does much the same. The main difference here, aside from just the aesthetics and the modern colouring, is this mystery of these concentric white lines, which I don't think it's too much of a jump for us to intuit pretty quickly that something is going on here with some sort of sound device. I think there's a comic short code of these sort of circular lines being like a sound weapon almost, that we've seen it enough times to this point, and you've got the two pilots holding their ears like this, like it's causing them distress.
Not just a sound weapon, but more generally a sound waves, a transmission. That, in sort of signage, your instruction manual or like a street sign, if you have like a dot on top of a line, like an antenna, and you put 3 like parentheses on either side of it, that's an antenna that's receiving signal or broadcasting signal. That's, it's a button you might push to turn on your radio.
Like a signal, signal or sound. And we've got 2 Joes piloting this plane, and you might guess that one of them is Duke, but it's not made explicit, I don't think, as to who the pilots are of this craft.
Here's a reference to me that says this is in the main IDW continuity and not in the Marvel continued continuity, because these are 2 not green shirts, but in the Chuck Dixon series, a lot of Joes are wearing sort of modern 2008 green gear. One of these guys is not wearing a cowboy hat, right? This is not Lift Ticket and Wild Bill. And if this was a Real American Hero issue from any of the publishers, I think we might know which 2 Joes this is.
We see them again later on in the book, and again, it's not too much of a visual clue as to exactly who these guys are. That actually, there's one I think final page here with a thumbs up once Snake Eyes has accomplished his mission. So they're getting informed as the progress and the removal of the sound device. Again, it's a blonde guy in a sort of military costume. You might think it's Duke, but it's not made completely explicit.
If Skybound were to reprint this and recolor it, because I don't love the colors, to put it mildly, you could make that blonde guy have a sort of a tan yellow shirt, and then it would definitely be Duke. Okay, so I'm going to take just one or two opportunities. This is the first one to describe why I don't like the colors in this issue. And I have said before on Talking Joe that I'm not a fan of the coloring work of Jay Brown, who colored roughly 140 issues of A Real American Hero at IDW. So here are just a couple quick examples. On this first page, the values of all these colors are similar and in the middle. So these colors aren't very bright, and they're also not very dark. And if you were to put this page into grayscale in Photoshop, the grays would all be about the same. And another way of phrasing it is, if you think of a grayscale, 1 is white, 5 is a middle gray, and 10 is a black. And you have lighter grays, 2, 3, 4, and you have darker grays, 6, 7, 8, 9. Everything here is like 5, 6. And that comes across to me as sort of murky. I do see some highlights on the grenades. I don't know why. So technically it's not all 5 and 6, but I don't think Jay Brown has the best handle on how light behaves in different environments. And I find that his coloring work, sort of kind of whatever the scene, right? Whether it's in front of a computer screen or outside or at night or in a forest, everything's kind of treated about the same. One more example on this page. If you look above, in panel 1, if you look above Snake Eyes' finger, there's a sort of a ridge of clouds that goes up, and that same ridge of clouds is in panel 4 between the plane and Snake Eyes' leg, which is to say that the color artist here used the same, photo of clouds for panel 1 and for panel 4. And you're not supposed to see that. You're not supposed to be able to tell, but I can. It's distracting. It's sort of like in movies, if there's like a gunfight or a fist fight and the sound editor or sound designer uses like the exact same punch or gun firing sound effect like 3 times in a row, it sort of the rhythmic, musical, repetitive quality of it jumps out at you. It's like, no, all those need to be slightly different from each other.
So as the story progresses, Snake Eyes parachutes down, lands in the snow, he chops off his chute with his sword. And actually, I was going to comment as well that this first page, when we're introduced to Snake Eyes, we get a good sense of his loadout of gear, and we can sort of call back to Hama's little doodle of his loadout, so we can see that he's got the katana on his back. Definitely, he's got 3 grenades, and he's got the Uzi on his side. It looks like maybe you can see a knife on his right thigh as well, but I think we'll get a better sense of that as things progress. So he lands in the snow and sees this wolf sort of all caught up in the barbed wire, and it's close to being a splash page, sort of focusing in on this wolf, and he has got some wire clippers. Don't know where they appeared from, but he has got them, and he has cut the fence, and it set off an alarm. It's the person monitoring the station is sort of lit up in a red glow from the alert being set off, and then there are 2 guys in white on a kind of skidoo motorized snowmobile who sets off, you might guess, to investigate that wire break. My initial qualm just reading this page was that the wire looked very low tech, having seen like electric fences and those kind of things. It's a very sort of low tech looking barbed wire fence around some wooden poles, but no prize, suspension of disbelief. I'm sure you can disguise some higher tech elements within a low tech looking barbed wire fence.
Mark, you're saying that it looks like old just barbed wire with old wooden posts. How could that alert the bad guys that a wire has been cut? You're looking for some kind of like sensor or camera or like little box with a red light on it that would suggest that they could register whether this wire has been cut or not.
Yeah, although, I appreciate wires, made of metal, they can convey currents. If there's a break in the current, that could trigger a sensor. So I'm not making a big deal of this. It just, to the eye, it looks quite low-tech versus the sensor getting set off.
A couple things happen on this page that I want to point out. This issue has 2 examples of on-screen text. So here, wire break section 23, and late in the issue, in a helicopter cockpit, there's a warning light that goes off in a language that I can't read. And I don't think Larry Hama is saying to himself, text appears in 2 cases in the original Marvel issue 21 when Destro's computer tells him that, the wind and the weather make it unlikely that someone can parachute onto the castle. And then whatever the second one is, when it's like reflected in his helmet mask. So therefore, Larry Hama, should have 2 occasions of text appearing in this otherwise wordless issue. I don't think this is that. I think if you write a wordless issue, sooner or later, you might need to convey something, not just with body language and expressions, but like a sign on a wall, a light in a cockpit, or a computer readout.
Well, there's another bit. It says targeting processor on that chip that Snake Eyes takes out later on as well. Yeah, 3.
Thank you. Yes, there are 3 examples of, so no dialogue, no sound effects, no captions in this story, but there is sort of in-world visible text, right? Like Snake Eyes could write on a Post-it note, ha, you're dead, at the end, and hold it up to the bad guys who he's defeated. Now, Snake Eyes wouldn't do that in any G.I. Joe story, and he certainly wouldn't do that here. Okay, something else I noticed about this page, I can certainly imagine that Larry Hama's original layouts featured only squares and rectangles for his panels. And here, Benitez has taken panel 5 and made it a little bigger than its sort of space within the the grid of 3 tiers of panels. And he's also tilted it a little bit diagonally and made it not quite a rectangle, but a little bit of a trapezoid. And it's also sort of covering a bit of the panel above it and after it. And I don't think that's a good idea for this kind of story. I understand that on this page, the most exciting panel is panel 5 with these 2 bad guys on a snowmobile. I find this kind of overlap where a panel creeps over the gutter onto another panel before it and after it in this case to be a little distracting, because I start to see like not objects touching each other, there's still a border, and not like colors becoming each other. Like I'm not confused, like, oh, Snake Eyes is standing in snow, but then all of a sudden there's the pink sky. Like, oh, that's the next panel. That's not what's happening. I just appreciate generally a more neutral treatment of panels. Maybe the comparison, since we do a lot of comics to film comparison here on Talking Joe, is when I watch a movie, I generally want the camera to be on a tripod or a table or the ground and not moving. I don't mean moving camera like a dolly shot, or if it's on a train, or like it's in a car during a chase scene. I mean not handheld. I feel like in movies and TV, handheld is reserved for when a moment is subjective, someone's point of view, the camera is someone, versus objective, when the camera is the like neutral observer of how the scene is unfolding. And this sort of diagonal, slightly trapezoidal panel, it's not bad, doesn't ruin the comic, doesn't ruin the page. It's louder in terms of form than I think it should be. And what it's trying to be is loud for the moment it's portraying, which is like of these 2 guys. Also, just as a small observation of like character and costume design, one of these guys has a mask and one of these doesn't. And so my brain starts to think like, wait, is one of these guys particular? Should I know who this guy is and this other guy isn't? Because in this story, sort of maybe the only person whose face we can't see should be Snake Eyes. And if you have anyone else, like if it's like a polar assault trooper, if it's a bunch of polar assault troopers in a Cobra story, that's fine, right? We really can't see their faces. But here, these two guys are treated slightly differently. And my brain, it's like when I watch a trailer for a movie, I can't help but start to try and piece together the story. Like, oh, is this shot from Act 3? Are they giving away the ending? Okay, my final comment on this page, and this is the second and only other time I will frown at the color work of J. Brown. I don't like it on any of the pages in this issue. But here's an example. Here's one more example.
It's a lofty promise.
No, I really promise. All right, so this is sunset, and so in the middle panel, there's this gradient of this sort of dull blue. It's got a little bit of brown and a little bit of green or a little bit of gray mixed to it. And the gradient comes down to like a pink peach. Mm-hmm. And I like it. That means that the light for this scene should be pink or peach. And yet all of the highlights for the snow are pure white, as if a like regular moon is directly overhead, or like not a spotlight, but like a light. And considering that the light source in this middle panel where we're behind Snake Eyes looking past him to the horizon, right? And it's hard to see, but the wolf is in silhouette in that panel. Do you see it? Between some of the barbed wire, between the right post and the far right tree.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Very small, but yeah.
So the wolf did get away safely. That's what this panel is showing. I think Benitez could have drawn a little bit better, but anyway. Okay, so the light source is like way in the distance where Snake Eyes is looking. It's behind all these trees. And yet here by the post, there's this like highlight on the snow. So not only is the highlight the wrong color, it's also a highlight. And there is no light source because the tree is blocking the sunset. And then go back to the third panel, right? The wolf has like all this white fur. So I think J. Brown is I don't know, coloring quickly or without thinking more about what the actual physical space is doing.
Mm-hmm. So page 4, again, we got some quite dynamic panel layouts here, some angular, no parallel lines on the borders. So I guess trying to emphasize the action of this as the Skidoo arrives on scene. Snake Eyes is hiding underneath his parachute, jumps out, very high jump there, comes down below, and sort of ninja samurai style, movie style, comes down and sort of slashes these two with an implied sort of strike that we don't necessarily see on screen, but do see sort of the aftermath of these two polar troopers falling down away from the Skidoo. So next up, we are in the base, the unspecified base, with these sort of baddies in green. That we're sort of introduced to the main male baddie with his sort of eye slits, which are like almost like sewer drain covers or vents, and the female with sort of spiky blonde hair and one of these big wraparound yellow sort of goggle type things that what's the name of that DC character that's got, it's like Lady someone, I don't know. Oh, I'm thinking of the Phantom Lady from DC Comics Freedom Fighters.
Oh, I was going to say it's like Mirage, the Mega Marine.
Mirage the Mega Marine is a much more on the nose comparison. And they're in this base, which so far at this point we don't necessarily get too much of a sense of what it looks like. We get a bit of a reveal of that of the fact that it's got this like silo element to it a couple of pages on. So there's a monitor station, which is where they've been looking at the C-130 and been getting the alerts. And there's a walkway in the middle of the station is we see the back end of a helicopter with a mechanic working on it with a giant wrench. And then there's some sort of like, kind of puts you in mind of like a sewer kind of cylinder, underneath, sort of into a door.
A small round hallway tunnel that has closed doors at the other end.
We're beginning to get a sense of this space, but there's a lot of very and we'll touch on this in a bit later, a lot of very similar colours going on. They're in green costumes against a green background on a greenish walkway with a top level that's green and a lower level that's green.
And a green helicopter and a green C-130.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so Mark just referred to a top level. So these two specific bad guys, the tall male with the goggles and the woman with the visor, they're on an upper catwalk here on page 5, and they're heading to a staircase. And Hama and Benitez are, I think, suggesting that they may go into that lower space. Sorry, just go back one page. Something we should call out in terms of story. In the first panel on page 5, the C-130 turns around. And so I don't know if the story beat here is now that it has dropped off Snake Eyes, it can return to base, or
coming
it's
back.
Got a secondary, it's got a secondary mission, or it's supposed to sort of park in the air, and just circle and stick around. But the communications or security minion of these bad guys at the console sees it and shows the bad man and the bad woman. Okay, so if you can jump to page 6, now they have gone down those stairs past the helicopter, which unfortunately we don't quite see in this first panel, and into that small cylindrical sort of round hallway tunnel, where they then get to some endpoint that has a special console with a big glowing screen or button and a bigger monitor that shows the C-130. And so, this must be the control room for this specialized sound weapon, because we then see this unusual device sort of on like the top of a pole or a monopod or a flagpole, right? And it's sort of round and has some lights on it, and then we're outside, and this dome with snow and trees on it is parting, sort of like the top of the terror drone, but just in two halves, right? And revealed underneath this dome is that helicopter on that lower level, and that tunnel, and that catwalk on the upper second level, and a bit of that initial monitoring station. So Hama and Benitez are trying hard, and I think somewhat effective, of visually explaining where everything is in this base. And I think it might imply that these trees are fake.
Yeah, maybe.
Because the roots, the roots would have to go a lot, whenever you see a tree above ground, there is as much of it below ground as roots as there is above ground. I think here, the first panel of this page has so much headroom, it's as if there's space for word balloons. And maybe it doesn't need that much headroom. And maybe the bottom panel on this page wants a little more room so it can be a little bit bigger, so we can enjoy all these details of, like, okay, there's the helicopter, and there's that little monitoring station. Okay, Mark, I'm just picking out something for the first time. On this bottom panel of page 6, the sonic weapon is extending further. That's that sort of black up and down shape near the moon. Right,
yeah.
To the left of the...
Okay,
sort of
so you're taking
trees.
that as it's extending up,
Yeah.
upwards and outwards
panel-
and up, because the silo's opening and it's now above the top of the silo.
Yeah, you know what I need? I need some lines in panel 3 to show that the pole is extending, that it's telescoping upward in panel 3. And because if you drew those lines in panel 4, they'd be too small, you wouldn't see them.
Yep. Okay, and then we have the guy, I guess, at the station monitoring. Oh, we can see him actually on panel 3, the guy at the station monitoring what's going on. He's looking at the skidoo coming back. We can sort of see the hint of a white coat, so I guess he's assuming that it's his guy coming back after investigating the break in the fence, but it's Snake Eyes, and he keeps on going over the lip of the silo with the skidoo coming down into the silo, and he's jumping off, taking off his coat in midair, grabbing his katana and unsheathing it as the guy is leveling it at his pistol at Snake Eyes. Lots of sort of speed lines suggesting lots of energy here. Again, lots of jaunty panel angles. And that particular element of the story is continued sort of in the middle panel as Snake Eyes cuts the pistol in half.
Mark has jumped to the next page, folks.
And the top part of this page has got this sort of sound weapon broadcasting upwards. We might guess or read in that they're specifically trying to target this C-130 transporter, having, given that they were looking at it on their monitors and extending out this device, and sort of the pilot is looking at his controls in sort of surprise, as there seems to be like a pop. So it's not necessarily completely clear what's going on, but we can again sort of read in that this sort of sound weapon is interfering with the controls of the jet in some form, although we don't necessarily see the repercussions of that particularly.
Yeah, I think what's slightly fighting itself here is that on page 1, the weapon made it hard for the two pilots and Snake Eyes to hear. They were all holding their ears. And now on page 8, let me go back to page 1. Are they wearing... Okay, on page 1, they are wearing their headphones.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So here on page 8, the two pilots are also wearing their headphones. The sound weapon isn't making it painful in their ears. It's providing like electrical shocks and overloads to the instrumentation in their cockpit, which seems like a slightly different thing. And I'm not saying it can't be both. It would be clearer if it was just one or the other, but maybe something else needs to happen in order for this sort of second ability of the weapon to more clearly present. So here's an example. Maybe the sound waves on page 1 are one color, and the sound waves here on page 8 and on page 7, on page 8, maybe the sound waves, the concentric circles, are a different color.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that.
So the action continues. Snake Eyes jumps down into the silo to confront this mechanic guy who's holding the giant wrench, and we see a bit more of that helicopter gunship in the foreground as he does so. And then on the next page, we sort of see the aftermath with the mechanic falling down and Snake Eyes missing his sword. We'll find out where that went later on, but now holding his wrench in his hand as a couple of more Soviet-looking troopers sort of confront him, and Snake Eyes is quite happy to lay waste to these guys with his Uzi, taking them out. And in the top of the panel, the sort of two main antagonists with the fancy goggles are hitting a kind of red button, which looks to be closing the doors on this particular room that they're in.
Notably, in that first panel here on page 9, I think, they hear this commotion. They've turned their heads away from the weapon, the sonic weapon, and they hear Snake Eyes attacking. They hear an attack happening out in the main hangar bay.
Right, yes, because this is the weapon activation room by the looks of things. That when we saw them previously, they were in this sort of green glow as they are activating this device with the C-130 in the crosshairs.
Okay, so you said, here we are on page 9. You said in the second panel, the bad man and the bad woman hit the red button on the device. I'm not clear if this stops the weapon, changes its power, powers it up, opens these doors for the tunnel that they're in, or closes them. And I don't know that, I mean, I wasn't sure in the moment, but I also, now that I've read the comic, I don't know which of those ones it is.
It's from the reading ahead aspect for me that makes me think it's a button to close the doors, like it's an emergency door control thing, seal us in, because
because
subsequent to that, the doors
do close. Okay.
looking to close, and the MacGuffin element of this giant wrench is that Snake Eyes has got it in his hand and is able to put it in between the doors to hold them open while he jumps through.
Okay, so I'm going to assume that these big doors in the small circular hallway, these doors would close slowly.
Mm-hmm.
I think I need more of a visual for them closing than the little bit that we get on page 9, panel 3, and page 10, middle panel. And yeah, I think I need a little bit more. And, this is not where I want to cheat, like, oh, just do a sound effect.
Mm-hmm.
And
when we are first introduced to this corridor and the door, it looks like it is shut. This is back earlier in the story.
Yeah.
When we sort of first get that idea of what's in this lower ground floor, basement floor, whatever you want to call it, that there's the circular corridor leading to closed grey doors with this sort of triangular yellow markings on it.
Okay, something that I think already doesn't work for me in this issue. All right, so in the original Silent Interlude, there are a couple of bad guys in the first half of the book. There's Storm Shadow, Cobra Commander, Destro, and assorted Cobra soldiers, right? I'm not talking about the Red Ninja because they show up, I think, after the halfway mark. And all of these characters do different things different ways, right? Cobra Commander is in front of a whole entourage and he points, take her away, right? He's surprised when Storm Shadow pulls out his sword. Destro has his hands to his chin, looking at the screen, looking at his chessboard. He's thinking, and Storm Shadow is a little inscrutable because he's wearing a mask, but he's bringing the prisoner. These two antagonists in Origins 19, right, who I'm calling Bad Woman and Bad Man, when we first see them on page 5, they don't have a ton of personality. They just have their costumes. He's standing straight. Her legs are spread and her arms are akimbo. That middle panel, this is back on page 5. They just sort of look at the monitoring guy. She has a little bit of an expression. He definitely doesn't. They walk very calmly on that bottom panel down the catwalk toward the stairs. When you turn the page 6, they are walking very calmly in the circular hallway. And Benitez does this unfortunate thing where he has their poses kind of match each other, like the way that they're walking, sort of the placement of their feet look sort of in sync with each other. And I read that as a mistake and not that Hama's plot says something like, these two are cold and emotionless, they walk like robots, or they have an electronic or psychic connection, or they're twins and they walk sort of in step with each other. Although actually maybe looking back at the previous page, Hama did write something like that. But, and then in that next panel on page 6, when they start to activate the weapon, they're just standing there. And it's hard because by the time we read issue 21 of the Marvel run, we know who Destro and Cobra Commander are. And maybe, I don't know where that issue sort of lands in like the timeline of Storm Shadow showing up in the second miniseries and the action figure showing up, but he's a ninja in white. And I don't know what's up with these two characters. They've got some gear. It looks a little superhero-y. It looks a little paramilitary. It looks a little cyborgy tech. And, if they just had names, if the inside front cover, in addition to a haiku said, introducing cool bad guy name and cool bad guy name. Now that's sort of cheating, right? But like, imagine if this was the same comic, but that was Xandar and Zarana, or Headman and Gristle, right? Or just pick any two antagonists, right? From G.I. Joe. you would have all this sort of context that you'd have all this good baggage. You just know stuff already. And because these two characters do the same thing as each other, right? And in the same way, and we don't know quite where we are. I'm guessing Siberia. I think they're Russian. When they then turn back on, what is it, page 9, 10, I forget. 9. When they turn to, because they hear the noise on page 9, right? And then push the button and the doors start to slowly close. It's like, who are they?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Do they definitely hear the noise as well? Because all of the baddies have got these big old sort of ear protector things. So and potentially that's part of the gimmick as to why it's silent, because everyone's got these ear protectors on and therefore can't hear anything.
Clever, Mark. Clever, Larry Hama.
Maybe.
Huh. I like it. Okay, so then on page 10, which is the 9-panel grid, we only see a tiny bit of them in that middle panel, and they're still standing quite calmly. And maybe that's Hama's plot, saying, these are such dangerous badasses. They're not going to sort of like have a react pose, like bracing for an attack, or but like the putting up your dukes, or like putting one foot forward to get ready because a guy's running at you with an Uzi, although they think the door's going to close. But I see a lot of acting in all the soldiers with AK-47s, and I don't see a lot of acting in these two characters. So, and it's like part of why the Terminator is scary is because he moves very slowly and he just sort of stares at you and he doesn't say much. So I understand the contrast here between bad woman and bad man and all of the regular soldiers with machine guns. I want a little bit more out of them. Period. Yeah. Separate thought. Page 10. Hey, everyone. A 9-panel grid. What is this, Watchmen? A 9-panel. Watchmen did not invent the 9-panel grid, but you almost never see a 9-panel grid in G.I. Joe. And I like it because Hama's got some very specific beats that he wants this page to accomplish. And he needs to put a lot in this page because this has this very specific, changing of the clip and using of the giant wrench. The 9-panel grid, because it is so standard and traditional, does feel like it's fighting in a way with the go back 3 pages, like big bursting, overlapping, slightly diagonal panels that Benitez is doing in this, like post 1990 Marvel Image style. And if that sounds like a nitpick, it's like, well, Tim liked the issue, but one page he said was kind of an old-fashioned layout, and then other pages felt really modern. Well, yeah. So, Mark, what do you have to say about page 10?
This page feels like it's the one that's probably closest to Hama's layouts in terms of that 9-panel grid. The more parallel lines of the borders and so on, but the specifics of the choreography of, Snake Eyes throws the wrench in the air, and while in midair, he's ejecting the magazine of his Uzi and reloading, firing, grabbing the wrench, and then inserting it to hold the doors open, and then flipping upside down as he jumps through the doorway to shoot the remaining guards behind him. It sort of feels like a lot of thought has gone into this choreography, and specifically Hama level thought.
I just want to reiterate something that you said on page 10. In the first 3 panels, Snake Eyes is flipping. He's doing a jump flip. He's letting one clip an empty clip leave his Uzi. He's putting the next clip in, right? So, because the reason why I'm calling this out is when Hama talked to me about this issue, then he called this out very specifically. Like, oh, Snake Eyes, he's only got 2 hands. He's got an Uzi, he's got a giant wrench, but he needs to change clips. That you can't do that with one hand. So while he's flipping midair, he lets go of the wrench. It's still flying midair. He changes the clips, and then he grabs the wrench again, right? So, and then he lands, right? And then he keeps running. I feel like this is now me, Tim, again talking, not paraphrasing Larry Hama from 15 years ago. I feel like these 3 panels right here at the top of page 10, I might read too fast and sort of nod like, yeah, doing cool fight stuff. Yeah. But like, oh man, you got to slow down and really savor the complexity of this choreography here. And I feel like Benitez does a good job of keeping track of where Snake Eyes is. In that first panel on page 10, there's an arc in the background that represents the sort of outside of the hallway and the inside. And then there's no background for 2 panels. And then Hama reminds us of the C-130 that's in danger, right? Which is important because that's sort of what we're fighting for, right? Like air supremacy over this environment, or if they perfect this weapon here, they can deploy it everywhere. And then
it's the C-130 is still under attack. It's in danger, and Snake Eyes is going to have to do something about it. So it's a good thing to point out. Mm-hmm.
Yes, it might crash because maybe those 2 pilots can't control it because the electronics have all been the avionics have all been fried. And then in this middle panel, Benitez draws a full background, and then very nicely from panel 5 to 6, full reverse angle, right? Looking one way down the hallway, looking the other way back down the hallway. And then Hama, like, again, has this very thoughtful, like, what is Snake Eyes specifically doing with this wrench in the bottom 3 panels? And I think Jay Brown does a good job here differentiating the color of sort of outside the tunnel and inside the tunnel. And again, there's this contrast in panels 8 and 9 between the 2 sort of regular soldiers with AK-47s who are surprised by Snake Eyes' amazing acrobatics. And then the final panel where Snake Eyes, mid-air, doing like the high bar gymnastic, right? Like as he's twirling over this wrench, fires back at them. But behind him are Bad Woman and Bad Man, again, standing. Oh, you know what? They're not that calm. They've started to react. Look at their legs. Okay. Well, anyway. Mark, page 11.
So Snake Eyes is looking slightly less confident as he enters the room. He sort of comes skidding to a halt, but as Bad Man and Bad Woman level their pistols at him and fire, they miss, resulting in Snake Eyes being able to leap at them and do a double kick to their faces. Bash, bash, and knock them down. It is a little bit of a nitpick of mine in terms of G.I. Joe's storytelling is that oftentimes the likes of Snake Eyes is very happy murdering minions like the troopers that he was shooting with the Uzis before. But when we're getting closer into primary antagonist grounds, it's sort of using slightly less deadly force. So here he's not shooting them in the heads or anywhere else. So he's kicking them down to the floor.
In the first panel here on page 11, it's subtle. This is maybe the only time you see Bad Man and Bad Woman sort of in a neutral view in scale with other people, where they're not cropped or they're not really far away or sort of in front of people. I think they're really tall. I think part of the story is that Snake Eyes is of average height, and these 2 antagonists are more physically imposing than all the other bad guys in the issue and Snake Eyes. Now, granted, they've only got pistols, and I don't know that we're going to get into a fist fight, but I think they're meant to be scary in their stature, imposing.
This next page was a little bit confusing for me. There's throughout the issue, I did find myself sort of having to flip back and figure out the sense of the geography of a particular space and work out what's exactly is going on. And this page was one of the more confusing for me. On panel 1, it looks like maybe they're on an elevated walkway and a Bad Woman is falling down off of the walkway, but that doesn't seem to have been established and seems a little bit at odds perhaps with the rest of what we see subsequently.
Yeah, I agree. If you go back to page 9, the one before the 9-panel grid, in panel 3, when we see Bad Woman and Bad Man in the weapon control room and the C-130 silhouette behind them, is there a very faint diagonal line to the right of her leg that's starting to show they're on a catwalk? They're on a raised bridge. Also, I think the other thing that you were about to say, Mark, is that here on page 9, when we see them in that secret weapon control room, it looks like just they're in front of a flat wall. That there's a wall and there's a giant screen on the wall and there's that like button that they push. But here on page 10, 11, 12, here on page 12, as she's falling off of this raised catwalk that we didn't know was there, it turns out that the sort of control console for the special weapon, it's at sort of it's angled, and that maybe there's, oh, sorry, go back a previous page. Go back to page 11, please. Okay, in this first panel, I don't get the sense necessarily that they're on a raised catwalk, but now it turns out that there isn't a wall behind them, that the giant monitor is like on its own sort of arm, stretched out from a wall or hanging from a ceiling, and the console, the control console, is a freestanding pod. So this room, this control room console for the special weapon, is actually much bigger than it has been drawn, because we've only seen it sort of flat. And I think maybe the idea here is that Hama's trying to make the world bigger as he goes, and then Benitez reveals this as he goes. I don't think it works.
I think there's, as Snake Eyes is going into this room, on his left is a wall, and then on his right is some sort of drop, so that it's kind of is an elevated platform, but and that sort of looks like that might be the case again from the very last panel of this particular page, as Snake Eyes is dropping down the grenade, which again is very small.
Would we maybe see a bit of Bad Woman on this last panel of page 12? How tall is this catwalk? Like, if she fell like 8 feet, wouldn't we see part of her crumpled body? Okay, also, here's something else that doesn't quite work for me on this page. Again, we're on page 10, 11, 12, page 12. In the first 3 panels, Snake Eyes crouches down at the control console, and then he's holding a book or like a giant rectangle.
Yeah, I think that's the flap. It's a panel.
Yes, he's opened the metal door for the breaker box or whatever. He can then reach in and take out the targeting processor chip out of that. But I don't see him take anything out. I see him holding something. Maybe it as unclear as it is that he just pulled it out, I don't see him reach in. I don't see him grab anything. I don't see him tug. So who's to say he didn't reach into his pouch, pull out something, and then he puts it in? And again, dear listeners, if you're thinking, so nitpicky, Tim, it's like, well, this is how he's, it's like, okay, in Star Wars A New Hope, when they're on the Death Star and they split up and Obi-Wan Kenobi goes to turn off the tractor beam, and he walks around that little sort of rounded catwalk, and he like pulls the lever, right? But then like 2 Imperials walk up and he thinks he might be discovered, or they might hear that the sound isn't buzzing, so he turns it back on, and then they walk away, and then he goes back around, turns it, depowers it, right? So I see him do the thing, and I don't exactly know what he's doing, and I don't like need to be able to see the computer screen or like have like a readout with like 10 red bars, and when it powers down, it goes down to 0 bars. The sound does it for me, and his arm doing this movement of pulling a lever, those 2 things in conjunction do it for me. Here, I see Snake Eyes opening a box, but because Benitez draws it in perfect profile, and I really wanted this to be more over the shoulder, so I could sort of see the sort of circuitry guts, like, oh, are there several of these chips? Maybe there's only one, but like I need to see into it, and I need this door, this little metal door hatch, to be at an angle, so I know exactly what it is, because I think Benitez and Lamas have drawn it as a slightly sort of cold, rusted metal door flap, but the way that Jay Brown has colored it, it looks sort of like other things to me. And because in 2 panels in a row, panels 2 and 3 here, Benitez draws a rectangular thing, and they're sort of at the same angle as each other. Snake Eyes' hand is on a rectangle, and then in the next panel, Snake Eyes' hand is on the rectangle. I know they're not the same thing, but visually there's this echo that confuses me, and I really want to see his hand reach in. So these beats this page needs 1 or 2 more panels, and this is on top of the thing that Mark said about the height of the catwalk. But then back to the story that I can understand. Actually, this next panel 4 is a little hard to tell. It's the sonic weapon at the top of its telescoping pole, out in 30 feet up in the sky, and it's spinning because it's been scrambled, so it can't,
like it can no longer target. Yeah. And we've got Duke or whoever giving a thumbs up, which I think means we're A-OK. The attack has stopped.
Yes, because the last time we saw the plane inside or out was 2 pages ago, and the weapon was hitting it. Those concentric circles back on page 10, the 9-panel grid, we did see that happen. And that diagonal of the plane back on page 10, I think implies that the plane is sort of like shaking or having a hard time, right? It's not, you don't draw the plane at a diagonal unless it's exciting or problematic.
Right.
If it's fine, you just draw it straight on. Okay, so Snake Eyes drops the grenade into a power hatch or ventilation hatch or something, and then cool move on page 10, 11, 12, 13, backflips out of the control room for the weapon.
I'm guessing jumps forward, holds on to the wrench, flips over backwards and pulls it out as he then propels himself forward, which means that the door's shut, trapping in Bad Girl and Bad Boy, who are now very quickly on their feet up against the door.
Okay. So, all right. So this page here and the previous page here feel like the least flattering comparison to the original issue 21 from Marvel, because the movement and fight choreography in that issue, right? Larry Hama has described how he has 2 different doorways in that stairwell. One is sort of straight and one's curvy. So like where Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow and the Red Ninja are. They're very, wow. Folks, if you're listening to this, Mark just pulled up that page. That's great. And there are different kinds of action in the original issue 21. There's sort of like jokey stuff, like the throwing the grenade. And then there's the like fast on his feet, kind of savage, taking out of the other Red Ninja using, own weapon against him. And earlier in the issue, taking out the Cobra soldiers, like up on the upper levels of the castle. And Hama's sense of having Snake Eyes move from one level to another in the original issue 21 is so clear. And if it's a little unclear, it sort of skips along and you get it. It's not unclear, right? He doesn't need like 10 more panels to show Snake Eyes going like up another staircase. Here, these 2 panels on the top of page 13, so Snake Eyes is flipping out of the control room for the weapon and grabbing the wrench at the same time. And it's a little hard to see because it's so small and the coloring is a little bit murky, but Bad Man is sort of rushing toward the door. And then in the next panel, panel 2, here on page 13, we're back inside. The doors have slammed shut, and there's sort of an effect line to show that they've shut. And both of them are sort of hitting the door and slamming the door with their fists, like, oh, no, let us out. Or, oh, no, we almost made it. The door closed. And that's just a very small amount of space to be able to visually impart all that information. And I did not see Bad Man in panel 1 until now when we did the episode.
Right.
And then the explosion happens. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 6 panels on this page. And I feel like a different layout. I think you can get all 6 of these story beats onto one page. I don't know that it wants to be these shapes and sizes. I think maybe giving a full third of the page to the explosion with Snake Eyes in this tunnel. I think maybe that wants to like move over and be half the size so that some other panels can get some more space. Because I really want to enjoy that Snake Eyes is so clever and savage that he got out and trapped these 2, terrible villains with his grenade while also taking out the weapon. And then, Mark, what does he do on the bottom half of the page? Before he gets all the way out, he...
I don't know what you're asking me to say, Tim.
Oh, he throws grenades to the...
Right, okay, yeah.
Back out into the main hangar.
And we've got the 3 grenades that we had introduced at the beginning of the story, and keeping track of the gear. 1 grenade down into that green room underneath the grid, and the remaining 2 out of the circular walkway thing to take out these guys with their AK-47s. And boom, boom, explosions either side of Snake Eyes as he's crouching, seeing both of those. One of my slight gripes about this is that because, I mean, we've only got a very rough idea of the amount of baddies, for want of a better word, in the story. That sort of, it does seem a little bit just like there's waves of baddies coming out and we're not sure where they're coming from or how many of them we are. Maybe a minor gripe, but gripe nonetheless. And then we get the hero shot, Tim. It's unusual for G.I. Joe to have a page like this, really, particularly Larry Hama one. This is like the payoff shot. Let's give Joe Benitez something really cool to draw. The most expensive page of original art from the book. It's basically full figure, knees up, hero shot of Snake Eyes, all in black, smoke coming up from the aftermath of these explosions. Holding his signature Uzi weapon and all of that sort of cool, webbing gear, sort of, making him look a little bit more interesting than just a pure black costume.
And that is what Hama said to Benitez, that this issue builds to this page. This is where you get to draw the cool shot. It'll be fun. It's unusual for a couple of reasons. We do have splash pages in G.I. Joe comics. They tend to be story pages. I think of the first page of issue 97 from Marvel, where 2 Joes are pinned down behind a car on a street, or the splash page, pages 2 and 3 for is it 139, where like Megatron and another Decepticon have landed right in front of the Destro's castle, and it's very clear sort of where everyone is, and it does make for a cool piece of original art, but it's not a poster and it's not a cover.
Yeah, more often than not, there's maybe setting the scene. It's some Joes in their signature vehicles going into Fort Wadsworth, driving along, or maybe it's a big story beat, like there's a tidal wave that's been created, from that giant explosion that created Cobra Island, and it's an exciting story moment, but it's not like that kind of splashy hero figure shot. Very few of these type of shots come to mind.
Yeah, so there is story here, because this is the moment after Snake Eyes has taken out what I think we can accept as not all the bad guys in this base, but all the immediate ones that present a problem. And so he can, take a moment to sort of, I don't love this, but sort of slow down and pose for the camera, for the readers that are like, yeah, badass. And then Benitez can, sell this page for a lot or keep it. But this drawing, the way that it's composed, might as well be a cover. Maybe you need a little more headroom to fit the logo. I do like the drawing. I do like the page. I don't love this page in this issue, because in a wordless issue, space is at such a premium. And so I will lay this not at Benitez, but at Hama, because Hama in his plot says, like, big shot of Snake Eyes or something like that. Here you go, Joe Benitez, Snake Eyes is triumphant. Draw a cool Snake Eyes, in front of the door with smoke below. And considering how sort of crunched down the last page or two were, I sure could have used some of the space here. And this does feel like a very modern take. Like the Larry Hama who did issue 21 in a hurry would not have done this. There is a splash page in issue 21, right? Don't forget, it is the first page, but it does a tremendous amount of setting, of establishing for the issue, right? So here's the vehicle that Hasbro once made a hype. Here's a character who we haven't met yet. There's a mystery because there's a satchel. We're going someplace that we've never seen before, but we're far enough back that we can understand sort of all of it. The castle with this and that and this and that, and then we're in the mountains. And we are close enough here on Snake Eyes that we don't get the context of like, oh, well, are there other troops starting to come around the corner on the left or, behind us or something? His pose doesn't look like, oh, I hear more people coming. It's like, no, I'm a badass. Everyone enjoy this for a moment. And this is what, comics do more of in the 90s and after. And you would never have a page like this. I'm not angry. You just would not have had a page like this at Marvel between issue 1 and 155.
And then the next page is another quite, it's not, I want to say splashy. It's not, definitely not a splash page because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 panels, but it's very Snake Eyes focused and very tech and sort of action gear focused. So close up of Snake Eyes firing his Uzi and all of those shells sort of flying out the side of it, reloading and firing again, and then with his empty weapon and still more enemies coming, he throws both his empty Uzi and his combat knife, taking out 2 of the remaining sort of Russian soldier guys. And I think the bottom left is sort of the Uzi, bumping off of the guy's head on the left.
So, question mark, where did this knife come from?
Yeah, it's a good question. I was thinking about that myself. It's not especially clearly established in this view or the preceding views where that knife actually was, though.
In the Hama diagram.
In the Hama diagram, it's more clearly kind of on his shoulder, left, on like his, there, on his pec.
Based on Benitez's pose here on page 15, the one after the splash, panel 1, 2, 3, 4. In panel 4, Snake Eyes is holding his Uzi with his right hand and reaching down with his left hand. So I guess it's in the pouch that definitely can only carry Uzi clips. Objection, Your Honor.
Leading the wins.
I'll allow it. But the fun thing that happens here on page 15 is that after Snake Eyes uses his Uzi the way you're supposed to, and then he uses it again the way that you're supposed to, and he is now out of clips. And this weapon is no longer valuable to him. He uses it as a weapon by throwing it. Excellent. And he uses the knife the way you're supposed to use it. He throws it. And then he runs forward, and this is a very Larry Hama thing, right? It's like, what's even better than Snake Eyes using all of his weapons and then like throwing his weapon away and hitting a guy in the face with his machine gun? What's even better than Snake Eyes like changing clips in mid-twirl? What's even better than Snake Eyes like somersaulting over a giant wrench holding the bay doors from closing on the Death Star? In the hallway. The 2 guys he just took out, as they fall back, they let go of their AK-47s. And in this final panel on page 15, he is running for them with his hands out. And then you turn the page and he has caught them and is mowing down everyone else with the bad guy's own AK-47s that he, Snake Eyes, has just caught mid-air as the bad guys dropped them. I feel like this scene here, the last panel of the previous page and this first panel, half of page 16, I feel like if you've never read the original issue 21 and someone describes it to you and they're like, oh yeah, there's this ninja and he's really cool and he like raids a castle and like he takes out the bad guys. I feel like this is what you're sort of expecting. Like, oh man, he's going to catch their weapons and mow them down. And issue 21 is actually sort of more understated. And this is the crazy action movie. This is the like John Woo Hong Kong cinema slow motions or like amped up kinetic action.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's to diminish issue 21. I think issue 21 is amazing. It doesn't have anything this gonzo. And now that I have said how much I love this bit of choreography with catching the bad guy's own weapons when he's out of weapons, although Snake Eyes is a weapon, I will critique this page because I think the choreography of the bottom half of the page, Snake Eyes jumps up onto the like the platform for repairing the helicopter. He jumps onto the platform, jumps onto the helicopter and then jumps up outside out of the sort of dome bay doors out onto the snow. I feel like that is more important in terms of story. It is not as exciting as the big half-page splash panel above of Snake Eyes shooting a bunch of guys with 2 machine guns. And someone once told me you can't really fire 2 pistols at the same time or 2 machine guns at the same time with any accuracy. It's too hard. They move too much. But for action movies and comic books, objection, Your Honor. Sustained, I'll allow it. But as cool as this top panel is, I think it needs to be smaller so that Benitez can really hit home what is happening on the bottom half of the panel page. It's not unclear. It is clear. I think it could be clearer. I'd be more satisfied in reading this, because let me look at I phrased it in a way that I like in my notes. Panel 1 is the least important, but it's the least important story-wise, but it gets the most space. Whereas the later panels on this page are the most important story-wise. Story-wise, it's not that important that he kills the rest of the guys. We sort of assumed that was going to happen. And actually, it's not that clear that he definitely kills. I mean, he kills enough of them just to be able to get away. That's actually what the story is, right? So he's fleeing because we don't know how many other guys there are. We don't know how close they are. We don't know how many bullets are left in these AK-47s.
And there are enough of them there that they are able to chase him on skidoos. Hero exits, pursued by skidoos, as Shakespeare once wrote. And they sort of are making a point on sort of this page and then the next, probably more so in that this shot of Snake Eyes full figure on the left, that he is out of his gear. He has lost his sword. He's lost his Uzi and used up all of his ammunition. He has no longer got any grenades, and he has also not got those AKs that he had picked up previously. But we discover as well that Bad Man, Bad Lady are still alive. They must have snuck into a protective. What would you call this space that they've gone into? A sort of under the walkway,
basement. Oh, conduit.
Yeah, so there's a space. There's a sort of a space underneath the walkway where the explosives went off. That sort of got a protective doorway to it that they've been able to sneak into and escape the explosion. So it's
very specifically they're peeking out to see they're in the main room where the helicopter is. That's
right.
What that wheel
okay,
is.
So it's like an alternate kind of access to where they were when the explosion went off, that they it's an underfloor sort of space that contains all of the pipes and stuff like that. And as we know from watching lots of action films, that if you want to sneak about unseen, there's alternate ways of getting around these spaces. Although if it was such a protected space with this giant closing Bombay door on it and all of that kind of stuff, if you could quite easily get into it via another access point, it sort of begs the question.
There's something a little odd happening here on the final page, the final panel of 22, 21, 20, 19, page 19, the one that you have on screen right now. Bad Woman is halfway up out of the sort of subfloor level where the pipes are and out onto the main hangar bay where the helicopter is. I think what's happening here is she's balancing her feet on Bad Man's hands and he is lifting her up, giving her a boost. And you don't have to pull the camera back 2 feet so that Joe Benitez, you can draw this actual contact point of her feet on his hands, and his hands doing that like very clear hands together so you can give someone a boost hand gesture. But it's a little unclear then what's happening since it is cropped so close. So so -1 point.
Dear. So Snake Eyes is pursued by these 2 snowmobiles. He is, as we say, disarmed apart from his hands, which have to be registered as lethal weapons under state law. But he is rescued by a wolf pack of his, the wolf that he had rescued. His buddies are paying it back, playing it forward, and taking out these remaining baddies on their snowmobiles. And that very last shot of, let's call Timber, the hero wolf at the bottom, is looking exceptionally sort of playful, with Snake Eyes there, sort of in that head down, bum up, sort of excitable, wagging his tail, let's play a game kind of pose.
So in this full page view of page, what are we on, 19? 18, sorry. When the wolves attack the guys, I love the story. I don't love the storytelling. And I feel like we're giving panel 2 so much space and making it vertical, right? So we can, I'm glad that we can see Snake Eyes' whole pose, that he's sort of ready to just, punch it out with the 2 snowmobiles and the 4 guys, right? With at least 2 machine guns, right? And there's a moon behind him and there's the snow. So we reestablish, he's sort of, as you said, out of weapons. The surprise then in panel 3 that 1 wolf, but actually 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 attack. It's so narrow and sort of crammed into the panel that I wish it had more space. And it could be clearer, because I definitely see 1 wolf in the middle of the panel with this guy looking directly at it. But in the background, and then again, like the gray of the wolves is the same as the gray of the guy's winter gear. So it all just becomes like a big blob. And then it's very clear with this one specific panel, the second to last panel, with the wolf, mouth open and a human hand, 2 hands, like, oh no. And then the silhouettes on the bottom of the page of wolves sort of, tearing out guys' throats or whatever's happening, and the snowmobiles. It could be clearer.
Yeah. I mean, on the printed page, it's very small amount of real estate. You're really having to squint, but with the ability to zoom in on the digital copy, it's a little bit clearer that you kind of got the hunched wolf bodies and sort of arms sort of grasping out, but could have a slight difference of emphasis, although it would have definitely sort of amped the horrific element to this. And then we get the Snake Eyes exfiltration. He's blowing up a balloon, letting it up into the air, ready to be rescued by by the guys in the C-130. And we know about this as G.I. Joe readers because it's a sort of device that's been used previously in the pages of G.I. Joe, at least I think more than once, but most specifically in the pages of G.I. Joe Special Missions issue 1, illustrated by Herb Trimpe, where there's this Russian naval captain who wants to depose and away from the USSR, and they have the whole setup of the mission, but that's that's all subterfuge, and that the main point of this particular mission was that he would make an escape by attaching a giant floating balloon, which a C-130 can then sort of grab a hold of and pull him away. So Snake Eyes is using a similar device to try and achieve the same here.
Isn't this how Bruce Wayne gets out of Hong Kong?
True. Yeah.
That middle Christopher Nolan Batman movie. And also, it's not a balloon, but there's a harness with a hook in Operation Dragonfire in one of the animated in the first Deke episodes, which I have not watched in a while. Okay, so but there's a surprise here on this page because we're expecting the C-130, but instead that Russian helicopter that we saw in the hangar bay all throughout this issue up until now is what shows up. And I think what throws me off here, oh, I get it. Okay. On the third panel here, when the helicopter in air with its spotlight on Snake Eyes suddenly appears, Snake Eyes doesn't react. And part of me wants to say, well, shouldn't he be worried because he was expecting the C-130 and instead it's the helicopter? But he knows something I don't. And I'm positive that in Hama's plot, he said to Benitez, don't show the right side of the helicopter in panel 3 and in panel 4, right? Like panel 4, I'm sure it's like, show the two pilots, bad woman and bad man, as they bear down on Snake Eyes. They're going to get their revenge. You know, they got a little bit of battle damage. Bad man is missing one of his visor glasses pieces. So you just see his eye. Although there aren't like torn clothes or, you know, bits of blood or dirt on their face. And it could be hard to portray that anyway here because you've got sort of all the cockpit stuff and, you know, the glass and it's curved glass and the metal rivets and stuff. But Snake Eyes is expecting the C-130. Instead, he gets the villains who survived. And we turn the page, and now we're on page 20. And Mark, tell us what happens on page 20.
So Snake Eyes does this thing of going, hey, you guys, pointing at the side of the gunship. And they are able to kind of look out of the window somehow and see the side of their ship, which has got a katana blade stuck into it with a brown liquid, which we might assume to be some sort of aviation fluid, whatever, sort of leaking out. There's a flashing display that alerts the lady pilot, and Snake Eyes sort of just gives him a little wave. It's like, see you later, chumps. You're gonna come to a sticky end at the moment, and I have got a nice little I Spy for this bit.
I spy with my little eye.
I spy with my little eye, aka Google Lens Translate. The message flashing up on screen was hydraulic. So it was hydraulic fluid that was leaking and resulting in them not being able to control the ship, the gunship anymore.
Okay, so Mark's zooming back out to the full page view. In the final panel, they both react in shock or panic. This is a surprise because they've been really cool and smooth operators the whole issue, like the Terminator, just walking slowly down the hallway. Also, Snake Eyes does something unusual here. He waves, he communicates. And for the first, 298 issues of G.I. Joe, it's not that Snake Eyes couldn't communicate, it's that he didn't, right? He could not speak, but he could write stuff down, and he wrote stuff down 2 times. In issue like 5 and then issue 155. And, once or twice he had a hand gesture and then Scarlet would sort of translate. But the sort of convention is that he doesn't communicate. And here he does. He waves. And I sort of feel like underneath the mask, he's smiling. And part of me, because I'm used to the ending of, a Star Wars movie and, Batman Sub-Zero and just any TV show or movie ever where there's a big vehicle or a base, I want it to blow up at the end. The first few minutes of G.I. Joe the movie, I sure want that Cobra airship to blow up. I don't want it to limp away. So I see this leaking fluid and I think, yeah, it's fuel. It's going to catch fire. It's going to blow up, and you'll have this contrast of red and orange versus the blue, of the Arctic or whatever. And then I turn the page or I guess I've already turned the page. This is the right side of my open comic book. And a very strange sight greets me, which is an upside down helicopter. And I'll be honest with you, this is so unusual to me. I don't know how to take it. I sort of, when I get to this page, when I read this comic, I think like, oh, is this a printing error? Or did Joe Benitez draw this wrong? Or can helicopters actually go upside down? Or what does it take to make a helicopter go upside down? You know, why couldn't there just been a mountain right nearby and it just slams in the mountain and then it blows up? Then we could do both things. Hama could have his hydraulic problem, like, oh, we can't control it. Burp, burp, burp. And then it blows up. So, Mark, how do you feel about this funny, unusual first panel on page 21?
I don't know. It is what it is.
Okay.
I mean, I guess it can't blow up or sort of because you want to have the final page payoff. I guess you can't have one, but and also the other really. So instead, it's it's gonna just go get out, completely out of control and crash. Giving us that final payoff. So Snake Eyes has got his, has his balloon fun. The balloon is in the air. He gets caught by this what we've been calling a C-130, but now I'm not quite so sure because it looks like a bit of an odd shape, and it's got this extra thing on the front of the ship, which I don't know has necessarily been drawn completely consistently throughout the book. I've just gone back and looked at that plane across the book to say, does it always have that thing at the front? Does it always have that red light at the back?
So the plane has these two sort of prongs spread out from the front of the tip of its nose cone, and I think that's what's going to grab the cord with the balloon, but it's only been drawn from this same view on page 8 and on page 10. We only ever see it from the front. We don't see it from above or from the side. So I don't quite know what I'm looking at. I don't quite know what object is affixed to the front of the plane, and therefore I can sort of only guess how it's gonna, like, is it gonna, like, if you jump off if you jump out of a building so that you can grab like a rope, so you can grab onto a rope that's hanging from a helicopter, you're going to jump with your hands open, and when you grab the rope, you're going to close your hands, and you're going to jump with your arms open, and when you get the rope, you're going to close your arms so that hopefully you've got the rope against your shoulder and your chest, right? And then you don't fall at the end of this action movie that I guess I'm writing. And but I don't quite know how the mechanics of this work, and I feel like this second to last page here is missing a panel where the plane does successfully sort of winch the rope, because I sort of thought, like, oh, is it going to pop the balloon? Or again, because it's such a weird visual to have this helicopter upside down, and Benitez and Lamas have not been inking either of these vehicles with so much spotted black shading as they suddenly do on the second to last page of this comic, when for two panels the helicopter is upside down and like pointing straight up and down. So I know that clearly the helicopter and the plane are different objects and different shapes, but because one is so strangely behaving so strangely, and they're both the same color, and I feel like there's sort of a missing panel here, I find this page hard to read, even though it's, I guess, clear. And then the helicopter does crash in the final panel, but it's sort of the moment before it crashes, because it's the rotor blades that are hitting the ground, chopping up the snow, not the actual like fuselage hitting the ground. So I guess my least favorite page of this comic is the second to last one. But you turn the page, and on the first panel of the final page, you do like get a more substantial, it's not just the rotor blades, it's the helicopter body itself that hit the ground, and the rotor blades are snapping. Okay. And then great panel inside the back of the C-130, red light, right? Which really nicely contrasts with the blue of the sky. And Snake Eyes is being pulled up through a winch, right? and someone is back there like operating, or they're going to close the bay doors, or they're going to welcome him on board. So I really do like the first two panels of this page. Mark, tell us about the final three panels of this whole comic book.
So we have our main antagonist, bad man, bad lady, upside down in that helicopter. And as we zoom in on them, we get a final panel payoff, which is this ultra sort of close-up panel of the wolf, the hero wolf, I guess you'd call it. Mouth open, growling, and this guy looking, bloodied up and somewhat terrified. And we are, I guess, fully expecting that the panel, if there was one following this one, which would be the wolf tearing this guy apart, essentially. So we're left on this climactic moment of the moment just before this, bout of bloody violence that will be unleashed upon these the two villains.
Here's an example of why I like my page layouts to be a little more traditional, with, rectangles for panels and gutters between them. I don't love the sort of diamond-shaped, parallelogram shaped, like overlapping, cascading panels that we're seeing here, because the blue and the green of the helicopter in the first panel becomes the blue and the green of the second panel. There's also some gray in the second panel. It sort of becomes the gray of the third panel. And I feel like these are separate moments. I think if this was a movie, the camera would be slowly zooming in or tracking in on the helicopter, and you can see the two evil pilots, and you get closer and closer, and then the camera sort of turns on the guy, and then you like hear the sound, and the wolf is suddenly in the shot. Or maybe it's a cut. You like get up close to him, and then you stop, and then you cut to a different angle of him, and the wolf is there, and like da-na-na, cut to black. Maybe you hear the sound of like him screaming, or maybe like a bite, stomp. These three panels become, because they're overlapping, because there's no white strip between them for a gutter, because the color, like the rendering is like, and like the wolf's all shiny for some reason. These three panels just become one big blob for me. And I understand the story, and I think the ending from a writing perspective is great. From an art perspective and a layout perspective and a color perspective, less successful. So it's sort of a bummer to end the story where I feel like the writing and the art are kind of fighting each other on these final three panels. And there is no the end. There's no like little G.I. Joe symbol to tell you that the story is over.
To be continued in 15 years' time.
It turns out. So if you're reading the comic book, opposite this page is this ad for the next issue of G.I. Joe Origins with a multi-part story. And I can't remember if this cover is by, I think it's by Werther Dell'Edera, who's now drawing Something's Killing Children. And then just one more sort of G.I. Joe appearance on this comic book. The back cover of this comic book is a full-page ad for reading IDW comics digitally on your iPhone. The battle never stops on your iPhone. And there's a picture of an iPhone with the IDW reading app or whatever. And the picture shows a little cover of 4 different G.I. Joe IDW comics, 2 movie tie-in ones, Cobra miniseries, and Origins. And I think at the time when IDW was running these ads to read comics on your iPhone, I think if you bought a Transformers comic, maybe this picture here had Transformers comics on it. So I don't want to say like everyone who bought IDW comics that month was treated to 4 little G.I. Joe covers on the back cover. I don't think it was that necessarily. But I do appreciate any time G.I. Joe makes one more appearance in or on a comic book. So, Mark, any parting thoughts for this issue of, man, we've gone a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I think I sort of started our deep dive discussion into this with my concluding thoughts almost, that it's a fun adventure jaunt but it kind of lacks a little bit of the weight and the substance and the so what components that kind of make it a little bit more of a classic. And I guess by having a sequel to it, it does somewhat mitigate that a little bit, that there is a bit more meaning behind it, that, hey, this was that story that then had a sequel all of those years later. That was that really great issue by Chris Mooneyham that was published in October 2025. I'm projecting a little bit there forward. So yeah, I think that aspect of it is interesting and so unusual as well, that you get this return back to this issue so much later, and to the side in terms of the continuity. So that for me now is probably the most fascinating aspect of this whole story.
Hama has brought some characters back many, many years later. And at Devil's Due, the Devil's Due writers brought some Hama characters back many, many years later. Captain Min, the White Clown, Wingfield. I'm mixing these two together here, Hama and non-Hama. So on the one hand, this is really surprising. Now, on the other hand, Hama has done this many times before. I'll point out one last difference between this comic and other wordless G.I. Joe comics. I don't remember exactly when the page count of modern comics went from 22, which I like, to 20 pages, which I don't like. But this issue of G.I. Joe Origins is 22 pages. And I always enjoy G.I. Joe comics that are 2 pages longer. And I still, even now, like 6 or 8 years into the era of 20-page comics from all the publishers, I still feel like I can often sort of tell that a story could have breathed a little bit more, or could have had like another beat if only it was 22 pages and not 20. So I was sort of reading this like already grumpy, like it's only 20 pages. And then I got to the end and I counted it. And it's 22. Good for me.
Bring it all back to G.I. Joe. There was and the sort of the changing of the guard in terms of the number of pages in a standard comic. Kirkman, I guess Skybound Energon Universe showrunner, Robert Kirkman, sort of seemed to take credit for the reduction of number of pages for a standard comic book. He noticed it was something that Eric Larson had done on occasion for the Savage Dragon, and to help his artist, I believe, on Invincible, decided to just reduce a page. And it's like, well, if you're reducing from say 22 to 20 pages, that's 2 pages a month, and if you do that for over the course of a year, that gives you enough space to do one extra issue, or at least give your artist the space to have done an equivalent of an extra issue, or cram in some extra work or whatever. And so he started introducing that as standard. And then when he explained the economics of it to Tom Brufort at Marvel, who was editing Marvel 2-in-1 that he was writing at the time, and wanted to introduce this same thing into of a reduced page count, sort of was skeptical at first, but then was brought around to it. Yeah, from of the publishing win-win of very little impact to the customer, but quite a big impact for the publisher. And after that point, it was pretty much rolled out as standard over the course of the next year. So that's a story that Robert Kirkman talks about in his interview with David Harper for the Sketched podcast, which was a very good listen. So I would urge people to seek that one out.
Thank you for that added fact, Mark. I didn't know that. If I may fact check you, I think you said Marvel 2-in-1. I think you meant Marvel Team Up.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Marvel Team Up.
But just to go back to that last bit, if a publisher pays 2 pages less for writer, penciler, inker, colorist, and letterer, and the cover price on the book stays the same, then the publisher can save some money. Or, with inflation, every 5 or 10 years, prices go up. So this has also historically been a way to not raise prices as much, or to delay in raising prices. So that's also part of the economics. And yes, it is. I forget who, but we interviewed an artist a year ago on this show, and I said, you're only drawing 20. Isn't 22 better? And they said, no, it's easier. And, then you do the math of a month, which is if a month is 4 weeks, and I know they're not all 4 weeks. The month is 4 weeks and you have to draw a page a day. If you're doing 22 pages a day, you have to work weekends. Also, if you do a cover, and if you only have to do 20 pages a day, why, you could do 1 page a day, Monday through Friday for 4 weeks and have a day or two off for, time to redraw something because the writer or the editor said, you didn't draw this right.
Yeah, see your family, take a walk outside. Right. I don't know, one of those crazy, outlandish things. So I think
I have nothing else to add. I think your introduction and wrap up are nicely stated about the sort of significance and place of this issue. So I'm done.
So as at the time of recording this, A Real American Hero 319 will have just recently come out. So it will only be a short wait of a couple of months before A Real American Hero issue 321 is out and you can see the sequel story. And of course, we will cover that as it comes out, as well as all of the other exciting comics being released by Skybound and other jaunts into the world of G.I. Joe like this one as well. If you are new to the show, you can find us over at talkingjoe.co.uk. That is the website with links to all of the places we can be found, like our Facebook group, and a link to our Patreon group as well. So patreon.com/talkingjoe is the place where that can be found. And a big thanks to Richard, Sam, Bill, Christopher, Justin, Rob, Shane, Simon, Chris, Joe, Craig, Frank, Mike, D, Shane V2. This one started the episode with 3 grenades, but has used them all. Infinite Entertainment, Patrick, and Gary V, who are all getting early access to episodes like this one, as well as special balloons that can, whip them away at a moment's notice, except without the balloon. So, Tim, where can you be found when you are not talking to me about all things G.I. Joe?
Video essays on television and film at YouTube. Look for Atomic Abe or Atomic Abe Productions. My comic book store in Massachusetts is Hub Comics, and I write about G.I. Joe at my blog, arealamericanbook.com.
Very good. And so until next time, Tim, just please remember, please give our listeners a nice little reminder of the message that they need to carry with them until they hear from us again.
Nobody Beats Talking Joe, an international podcast.
Laters.